Many people do not realize that Ever After High is actually a spin-off of Monster High. The truth is that you actually cannot separate Ever After High from Monster High. These two are deeply connected, and Ever After High and Monster High were always meant to cross over since Ever After High's inception. It was always created as sort of, like I said, a spin-off to Monster High that was always meant to come back around and cross over with Monster High. My name is Ainsley from Fairy Tale Lives, and I love making videos about Ever After High, and I am so engulfed in the Ever After High lore, you may know me from my Ever After High swapped at birth theory, that I often forget other people don't realize how connected these franchises are. But on my last video I made about Ever After High, which was basically kind of like the history of the Ever After High fandom, that was the last video I made, I received a comment on that video where somebody let me know that they actually, when they were younger, they did not realize that Ever After High and Monster High were both made by Mattel, and they actually thought that Ever After High was kind of a copy of Monster High, which is kind of funny. And they said, oh my gosh, I did not realize that when I was younger. I thought Ever After High was a copy of Monster High, so I didn't actually get into Ever After High until I was older. And then they were like, oh my gosh, when they found out that not only were these two made by Mattel, but they were also in the same universe, they were like, oh my gosh, I was totally wrong. It's not a ripoff of Monster High. It's literally a part of Monster High. So we are going to talk about all the connections between Ever After High and Monster High in their like shows, webisodes, and movies. But before we get into all the connections in the actual lore, let's talk about how Ever After High was created, because like I said, it is sort of a spin-off of Monster High. The first thing we need to talk about in terms of connections between Ever After High and Monster High is the Scarily Ever After line. This was a line of Monster High dolls that were basically dressed up as fairy tale characters. Like, the idea was that these Monster High characters were in a school play where they were playing monster versions of different fairy tale characters. So for example, this is Draculaura as Snow White, and then this is Claudine as Little Dead Riding Hood. She kind of looks familiar. She kind of looks like Cerise or Ramona. But again, this is Claudine dressed up as Little Dead Riding Hood, who was Monster High's version of Little Red Riding Hood. Now, I kind of have talked about the lore surrounding Scarily Ever After previously in my Ever After High and Monster High Parallels theory video, so you can check that out. I'm not going to go too in depth into Scarily Ever After here, but what I do want to mention is that Scarily Ever After came out in 2012. Ever After High came out in 2013. Originally, I thought that when Monster High released Scarily Ever After, and it was very successful because Scarily Ever After was very successful, they were like, oh my gosh, people love fairy tales, we should make a fairy tale franchise. However, I realized I don't know if 1 year is enough to develop an entire doll line. So actually, what I think is after the success of Monster High, Mattel said, how can we replicate this success? And they said, what if we did the same thing with fairy tales? And then they're like, would the same target audience be interested in fairy tales? So I think they made Scarily Ever After to test the waters. And because Scarily Ever After was successful, Ever After High then went into production. So you actually have this line to thank for the existence of Ever After High. And again, this feeds into how Ever After High is kind of a spin-off of Monster High. Of course, in the lore, it is a spin-off in the sense that it's in the same universe, but also in actuality, Mattel literally used Monster High to test out if Ever After High would be a good idea. So now let's talk about the Ever After High pilot. So I don't actually know when the Ever After High pilot was released. The pilot, though, was probably, made before Ever After High was made. I'm going to put up a picture of what the Ever After High pilot was up here, but basically it was a stop motion using Monster High dolls that were customized to look like Apple and Cerise to kind of like tell a story. And pilots are usually used to kind of like pitch to a studio, or I guess in this case Mattel, that Ever After High would be like a good webisode series, but also a good doll line. But again, this pilot shows that Ever After High is intimately connected to Monster High because in this pilot, they literally use customized Monster High dolls as the Ever After High characters. The pilot is also interesting in that Cerise doesn't actually seem to be the daughter of Little Red Riding Hood, and instead she seems to be the daughter of like maybe the huntsman or something. And also it seems that in the pilot, Apple and Cerise were the main characters instead of Apple and Raven. But I'm not gonna talk too much about the pilot here, but again, what is important to show is again, it's deeply connected to Monster High. They literally used Monster High dolls in the production of the pilot. But now let's get into the actual lore. So the first lore connection we really have between Ever After High and Monster High is in 13 Wishes. Now, I have talked about this before, so if you're getting deja vu, you may be getting deja vu, but I'm going to go more in depth into it here. And the connection in 13 Wishes is basically Gigi. This is Gigi Grant. She is a genie. Now, when you were younger and you first watched 13 Wishes, you may have thought, okay, wow, another monster. But then when you're older, you're sitting with it and you're like, wait a second. A genie isn't really a monster. If anything, a genie is like a magical fairy tale character. Genies are actually kind of like most popular in like Arabian folk legends. For example, one famous Arabian folk legend, Aladdin. Now again, I talked about this before. Ever After High is no way based on the Disney versions. Ever After High is its own separate thing. In fact, conflating Ever After High with the Disney versions is part of the reason Disney wanted Mattel to cancel it, so don't do that if you ever want Ever After High to come back. So no, Gigi is not literally based on the genie from Disney's Aladdin, but she is based on a genie from a story like Aladdin, or maybe the original fairy tale of Aladdin, which, like I said, is an original Arabian fairy tale. It's actually from like the book 101 Nights, also known as Arabian Nights, and also in Arabian Nights there's a lot of other stories besides just Aladdin. So Gigi is likely from one of these stories. Now, why am I saying this? This kind of shows that Gigi is not originally from Monster High. She's originally from Ever After High because she is most likely from some sort of Arabian fairy tale. In fact, if you read the Ever After High books, they mention that there's a son of a genie going to Ever After High, which again indicates that genies are actually from Ever After High and not Monster High. But there is more connections to Ever After High than that in 13 Wishes. In 13 Wishes, when we learn about Gigi Grant's backstory, we find out how Wisp was made. Now, of course, Wisp is Gigi's evil shadow, but the reason Wisp was created is because one of the brothers Grimm wanted to help Gigi since she was lonely, and so they turned her shadow, into Wisp. Again, this backfires because Wisp turns evil. However, in 13 Wishes, they show which Brothers Grimm it was. This is literally Giles Grimm from Ever After High. So canonically, Giles Grimm created Wisp to make Gigi less lonely. This also may explain part of the controversy between Milton Grimm and Giles Grimm, because I've talked about this in some of my other theories before, but it's very likely Milton Grimm would not have approved of creating, of turning Wisp into a real person, because he would say, oh no, that's not in Gigi's destiny. But as we know, Giles Grimm's a little nicer, and he'd likely say, no, it's fine, I'll create Wisp. And I think possibly this is part of the reason Milton Grimm got cursed and got locked away in the basement, is because, he made Wisp maybe after Milton told him not to, and then Wisp turned evil. So I don't know. But that is important. Giles Grimm is literally connected to Gigi, so that's already one Ever After High connection that we have. Oh, and another thing about Gigi, we sort of know that she has a destiny. You know how in Ever After High all the characters have a destiny where they're supposed to sign the Storybook of Legends? Gigi has a destiny. She is supposed to, she has certain rules she's supposed to follow. She's supposed to stay in the lamp. She's supposed to give 13 wishes. She has rules. Why does she have to follow those rules? I think she believes she has to follow them because she signed the Storybook of Legends. In my other Ever After High theories, I have talked about whether or not the Storybook of Legends is legitimate. So I'm not going to question the Storybook of Legends here, but what I am going to say is I do think Gigi has a destiny, or she believes she has a destiny, because guess what? Spoiler for 13 Wishes, but at the end of 13 Wishes, Wisp ends up taking Gigi's place in the lamp and becoming the genie of the lamp because Gigi wanted to attend Monster High. Why wasn't Gigi just free to leave if she didn't have a destiny? I think she had a destiny. And as we can see in Ever After High, people can steal or take other people's destinies. That's a thing. Courtly tries to steal the Storybook of Legends so she can steal Lizzie's destiny in Way to Wonderland. So basically, I think Wisp ended up taking Gigi's destiny, or Gigi thought Wisp took her destiny, depending on whether or not you believe the Storybook of Legends actually has any power or not. But yeah, so we see that Gigi has a destiny, that's a thing in 13 Wishes. Another thing we see in 13 Wishes is the Monster High attic. And you will say, oh my gosh, Ainsley, who cares about the Monster High attic? Well, first of all, in the Monster High attic, they find Gigi's lamp. And if Gigi is from Ever After High, that means somehow her lamp was traveled from wherever Ever After High is in the Ever After High Monster High universe to Monster High. Second of all, we literally see Ever After High relics, other Ever After High relics in the Monster High attic. We see the Evil Queen's magic mirror, we see Apple's poisoned apple, and we see the Mad Hatter's hat, which indicates there is some sort of connection from the Monster High attic to Ever After High. Also, another important thing is in 13 Wishes, when Gigi is dusting the attic, she knocks the mirror that is supposed to be the Evil Queen's mirror and cracks it. I don't know if that means anything. Before, one time I made a theory that perhaps this is part of the reason, I think I might have mentioned this in my Ever After High retelling, that this might be part of the reason the Evil Queen's mirror prison started to weaken, because throughout the Ever After High books and show, we see her mirror prison weaken over time. I don't know, but I just thought I'd leave that here. But anyway, I think those are all the connections between Ever After High and Monster High and 13 Wishes. There is a lot. 13 Wishes, again, came out around the time Ever After High came out, and I think they were really trying to set up the connection, because I think they always planned for there to be a crossover between these two franchises, and I think they were really trying to set that up strong, you know, in 13 Wishes. But another thing we need to talk about, which happened around the same time, is Cupid's transfer from Ever After High to Monster High. So technically, Cupid spent 1 year at Monster High, and that's like the year where we see her at Monster High. But then her second year, so after the summer break, she transferred to Ever After High. So technically, Cupid was always in Ever After High from the beginning, because she was there from the start of that year. Whatever. But anyway, so I'm not going to go super in depth about Cupid, because I have a whole video about her, so check out that video if you want to see that. It's a great video. Lot of connections, but I will say, like her transfer from Monster High to Ever After High is specifically explained in her diary. And again, I do talk about this in my previous video, so you can go watch the previous video, or you can also go like look up Cupid's diary, because she explains her transfer. Some interesting things I do want to point out about Cupid, though, is we don't actually know what species she is. She is the adopted daughter of Eros. I personally believe she's a bone elemental, because when Ghoulia was trying to figure out what species she was, because she was just like randomly left on the steps of Eros's temple, and she didn't know who her biological parents were, basically Ghoulia's research found that Cupid was most likely a bone elemental, and that's personally what I believe. I think when she's in Ever After High and she looks like a human, and like Cupid looks all fleshy in Ever After High, I think that's a disguise, because the people in Ever After High aren't supposed to know monsters exist, or whatever that means. So I think she wears a disguise in Ever After High. Another important thing, and this also connects back to the Monster High attic, is that when Cupid was still attending Monster High before she transferred to Ever After High, her crush started. Her crush on Dexter started before she even got to Ever After High. How did her crush on Dexter start? Well, she was roaming around the Monster High attic, because why is everybody doing that? Actually, in 13 Wishes, the reason they were in the attic was for detention, but Cupid was at like a party or something in the Monster High attic. I don't exactly remember. If you want the full details, go watch the Cupid video. But like in the Monster High attic, Cupid basically finds this book that's like, that has like pictures of all the Charmings or something. Like it was like, they're like a family book of like the Charming family, and she sees a picture of Dexter Charming, and she's like, he's hot. Again, why is there so much Ever After High stuff in the Monster High attic? I don't know. The crossover got canceled. Anyway, we'll actually get a little more into that later. We'll talk about the crossover, so hold on to your horses. But again, more connections in the Monster High attic to Ever After High. Sus. But anyway, that's how Cupid first found out about Dexter. And then when she transferred to Ever After High, she's like, oh my gosh, he's a real boy. But yeah, so that's how her obsession with Dexter started. Also, the reason that Cupid transferred from Ever After High, or from Monster High to Ever After High, is kind of vague. Like, basically, her dad, Eros, kind of, like, assigns her to schools, like, it's a job. Like, he's like, oh, you need to go help with people's love lives at Monster High. And she went to Monster High. And then he's like, actually, now I have another challenge for you. Go to Ever After High. Part of my theory is that Eros sent Cupid to Monster High as kind of, like, a training ground to see how she would do, because, believe it or not, Monster High is more normal than Ever After High, because there's actual problems at Ever After High. Like with Headmaster Grin being a hypocrite. Check out my Ever After High retelling for more tea on that. But like, basically, I think Eros sent Cupid to Monster High as kind of like a training to get her prepped for Ever After High, because when Cupid goes to Ever After High, obviously Headmaster Grim has to know she's from a different realm, because Cupid is like, where she came from was like the realm of the Greek gods. So obviously Headmaster Grimm knows that. But he seems to think she's there to help people follow her destinies, even though Cupid is literally a rebel and her dad kind of told her to help people follow their true heart's desires. So I think Cupid is kind of like a double agent in a sense, where Eros told Headmaster Grimm, oh yeah, my daughter will come, she'll help people follow their destinies. And then like Cupid came and he's like, no, actually make sure they follow their true heart's desires. So anyway, that's enough about Cupid. If you want more Cupid details, watch the other video. Now let's talk about the Easter egg in the Great Scary Reef. I'm only mentioning this because I know people will get mad if I don't mention this, but it's not that big of a detail and there's not really that much lore here. But basically in one of the background shots of the Great Scary Reef, we see a poster of Apple, Raven, and Maddie. I just put Darling here for fun because I couldn't decide which third character I wanted to put here, because I needed 3 and 3 to balance it out. So Darling's just here for fun. But Maddie is like the third character that participates in the crossover. But basically, yeah, in the Great Scary Reef, we see a background image of Apple, Raven, and Maddie. And I just think this was like a little Easter egg. Like, hey, in the Great Scary Reef, in the crossover, we're gonna see these guys. I just think it was a little Easter egg. I don't think it has any like deep lore implications that the people in the Great Scary Reef knew about Apple, Raven, and Maddie. I don't think there's anything deep there. I think it's just an Easter egg. But now let's talk about Astranova, because you will not believe how many people tell me that Astranova is from Ever After High. I have a spoiler for you. Astranova is not from Ever After High. Oh my gosh. Yes, she does know Apple and Raven, but let's get into that. What am I even talking about with Astranova? So, in Boo York, Boo York, which is a Monster High movie, we meet Astranova, and basically she is like this shooting star comet alien character. Like in Boo York, they're like, oh my gosh, this comet's gonna come, and then when the comet comes, like Astranova pops out of it. So she's basically a comet. I don't know. But everybody always likes to think like, you'll hear everybody say, oh my gosh, Astranova is the blue fairy from Pinocchio. Or they'll say, oh my gosh, she's the second star to the right from Peter Pan. Actually, I kind of made that one up. But everybody thinks like she's like the blue fairy from Pinocchio for some reason. I'm going to tell you guys, I read her diary, she's not. Oh, I should also explain Astranova's connection to Apple and Raven first. Basically, the reason everybody's like, oh my gosh, Astranova is connected to Ever After High is because like in the end credit scene, I don't know if it's an end credit scene, it's just like the very last scene in Boo York, Boo York. I like to say it's an end credit scene, that's more fun. In the end credit scene to Boo York, Boo York, Astranova FaceTimes Apple and Raven, and she's like, all the schools that we talked about were real, and then like Apple and Raven are like, no way, which indicates that like she had like at some point met Apple and Raven and indicated that she was gonna go across the galaxy and look for other high schools or other types of creatures or something, which I don't doubt that. I do think Astranova talked to Apple and Raven. I just don't think she's from Ever After High, and now I'm gonna get into that. First of all, there's literally no evidence besides her being blue that she's the blue fairy from Pinocchio. Second of all, the character from Pinocchio in Ever After High is technically called the blue-haired fairy. I know in the Disney version it's the blue fairy, and actually in the original Pinocchio it's like the turquoise-haired fairy, but in Ever After High she's we know, like, she's mentioned in the books. It's the blue-haired fairy, and people are thinking, oh, maybe, like, Astranova could be her daughter. I read Astranova's diary, and let me tell you, if there was going to be any tea, most of the spicy tea about Ever After High and Monster High happens in the diaries. Like, for example, with Cupid. I did not know there was that much tea about Cupid's transfer from Monster High to Ever After High. But I read Astranova's diary. It was boring. There was no tea. It's just, like, her mom, and her grandma are, like, these space people. And, like, they travel around the galaxy. So I don't think she's the blue-haired fairy. What I think is that she was traveling around the galaxy. And at one point she traveled to Ever After High. And she talked to Apple and Raven. And she's like, oh, yeah, give me your number. Like, which also, how do their mirror phones work across the galaxy? I don't know. Whatever cell signal they have, that's what I want. But anyway, I think she like got their number and it's like, yeah, I'll tell you if I find any other high school or whatever. So yeah, I think she definitely talked to Apple and Raven. I don't think she's from Ever After High. If she is from Ever After High, I think the one thing she could be is perhaps the second star to the right for like Neverland from like Peter Pan, because again, like she's a comet, her people are kind of like star people, like she's in the sky most of the time. I don't think she's literally like Gigi, I believe, like attended Ever After High at some point before she ended up at Monster High. Astranova, I don't think, unless it was like for 2 days, I don't think Astranova really attended Ever After High. Maybe she could have done like a semester or something, like just for fun when she was traveling the galaxy. But I don't think Astranova, what I'm trying to say is I don't think Astranova is like a citizen of the fairy tale world. She's not from Ever After. I think she's from the stars. If she's anything, I think she's the second star to the right. I don't really think there's anything more to that. So yeah, that's what I have to say about Astranova. Everybody loves to talk about that one, but I think there's way more lore with Gigi and 13 Wishes. But the other important thing to note about Boo York is the reason they did that is because they were trying to hype up the crossover movie. Because after Boo York and Dragon Games, originally we were supposed to like get the Ever After High Monster High crossover movie, which we didn't get. And I will talk about that a little now. Oh, also before I talk about the crossover movie, like I said, in terms of Ever After High, the last special / movie before what was supposed to be the crossover movie was Dragon Games, and there is a smaller Easter egg in Dragon Games for Monster High. There's just more Easter eggs in Monster High for Ever After High, but there is an Easter egg in Dragon Games, and the Easter egg is basically like, after Apple gets poisoned, Raven is like, oh my gosh, I wish this never happened. This is all my fault. I wish it could have gone somewhere far away where fairy tales don't even exist. And then Maddie's like, oh, maybe somewhere like, I don't know, maybe somewhere like where monsters exist. And then Maddie's like, but who ever heard of a Monster High? Maddie. So basically, that's supposed to be just like a fun little Easter egg, like Maddie mentioning Monster High. And she's acting like, she's like, oh, who ever heard of Monster High? Like, she doesn't know what it is. The real question here is, does Maddie actually know Monster High exists? Because I don't doubt none of these girls, before whatever their FaceTime call with Astranova, which honestly, canonically, the FaceTime call with Astranova probably has to take place after Dragon Games or like after even Epic Winter. Which again, I don't think Epic Winter was originally planned in the timeline. I think originally the crossover movie was next. So let's just say, originally, their FaceTime call with Astranova would have taken place after Dragon Games. So these guys did not know anything about Monster High. But did Maddie? Because here's the thing. In A Wonderlandful World, which is the third Ever After High Shannon Hale book, Maddie briefly has to take the place of the narrators. And when you're a narrator, you can kind of see things and see into other people's mind and just like know stuff. So technically, not only can Maddie hear the narrators, but she also has narrator powers, which like they literally say in A Wonderlandful World, like when you're a narrator, you have to narrate what people's thoughts are so she can see what people are thinking. And we know Cupid knows about Monster High. Honestly, Milton Grimm probably knows about Monster High too, and he's just lying about it. So I wouldn't be surprised if Maddie accidentally found out what Monster High was. And then the other narrators were like, Maddie, you cannot tell anybody about this. No. This is like a universal rule. You cannot tell anybody about Monster High. It's going to mess up the plot. And she's like, okay, I'll try really hard to keep it a secret. And then I think during Dragon Games, Maddie accidentally let it slip about Monster High. And that's why if you watch the scene in Dragon Games, it's like kind of awkward. Well, it's awkward because like Raven's sad and then Maddie makes a joke, which is still in character for Maddie, but that's part of the reason it's awkward. I think the other reason it's awkward is because Maddie's like, oop, I was not supposed to say that. Because there's a lot of times actually in the books and stuff where Raven, even though Maddie's her best friend, she'll try not to tell Maddie stuff because she knows Maddie will accidentally say something. So I think Maddie was trying not to say anything about Monster High, but she had a little slip up. And that's why she's like after she says it. So anyway, now let's talk about the crossover movie. So originally, before Disney, before everything was ruined, originally Ever After High and Monster High were supposed to get a crossover movie. This would have been called Fairy Tales, spelled like fear, but it is now known as Lost Movie because it never happened. In this movie, basically, Draculaura was looking for her friend Una, who's a new character. But Una is a nine-tailed fox. She's a kitsune who was obsessed with fairy tales. And again, this establishes that in Monster High, they do know about fairy tales. So likely, like, in Sincerely Ever After, when they were dressing up like fairy tale characters, that's because they know what fairy tales are. And there's moments in the crossover, both crossovers, which we'll get into, because basically we were supposed to get the Lost movie, and then when it was canceled, we ended up getting a different thing. We got The Legend of Shadow High, which is a crossover between Ever After High and G2 Monster High. And in both of them, it's kind of indicated that, like, they're like, oh my gosh, monsters are real. And then the monsters are like, oh my gosh, fairy tales are real. And in Ever After High, they call monster stories, like, scary stories. And so both of these things are supposed to exist behind the fourth wall, like, in a world of stories. But Ever After High just exists in the world of fairy tale stories, and Monster High exists in the world of, like, scary, or honestly, you could probably say, like, gothic horror stories. Anyway. So they both exist in different parts of the same universe, which is behind the fourth wall. Okay. So anyway, basically Dracula's friend, Una, was obsessed with fairy tales, and a long time ago, she tried to enter the realm of fairy tales and she went missing, blah, 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 blah. And they end up trying to, like, find her, and they end up, like, in this labyrinth where they meet up with Apple, Raven, and, like I said before, Maddie, not Darling. These two are in the Lost movie. It's Frankie that's not. It's Cleo instead of Frankie, because Claudine and Maddie swap powers. So Claudine and Maddie swap powers. Raven and Drac swap powers, and then Apple and Cleo swap hair colors when they're, like, lost in this labyrinth. And then they eventually find Una, and then eventually they go and fight the evil queen or something. We don't know how it ends. The only reason I know that much is because I have seen the storyboards that they released of what was planned for the Lost movie, which you can go watch. I will link them below. Also, if you want a more in-depth talk about the Lost movie, go watch my Parallels theory, because I really get into what happens in the Lost movie. But basically, that's what all these Easter eggs were building up to. These, honestly, I think, in a perfect timeline, I feel like the Lost movie should have been the finale to G1 Ever After High and Monster High. I feel like G1 Monster High had a pretty good, like, run. Like, they had a lot of stuff. I still wish maybe Ever After High had one other movie besides, like, the Lost movie, just to wrap things up. But I feel like that could, like, I just wish Mattel had more time and more funding, because I know they were in a tight spot during that time. It was like, I talked about it in the history of the Ever After High fandom, if you want to know why, like, the Lost movie was canceled and everything. You can go check that out. But they were, like, in a tough spot, and they had to reboot Monster High, and they had to cancel Ever After High. So I understand why they didn't make the Lost movie, but I wish they did. I just wish they could have held on a little longer, because they really already, like, probably halfway done with it. I don't know. They already had all the storyboards done. They had, like, character models and stuff. You can find them online. So I just wish they would have held on a little longer. That could have been a great going out with the bang, because literally from the inception of Ever After High, they had done so much to build up to this movie, and then it came crashing down. So yeah, we don't exactly know how the Lost movie would have ended, but if you want to know how maybe it would have ended, you should check out my Ever After High retelling, because I am not done with the Ever After High retelling yet, but basically I'm retelling Ever After High from beginning to end, and when I say end, I mean I'm gonna try to figure out how Ever After High was supposed to end and what would have happened in the Lost movie, so stay tuned with that. Hey guys, it's Ainsley from the future, and before we talk about the Legend of Shadow High, I actually want to address a few things. So first of all, since I filmed this video, we got the picture of the new G3 Cupid. She looks so amazing. I love her. She's, like, the best parts of both Ever After High and Monster High. CA Cupid, she is great. Her name is now Cupid Hysteria. I really love that they went back to the bone elemental form. I mean, I always thought they would do that anyway, since, like, she's a monster, and I thought, like, her fleshy form in Ever After High was a disguise anyway, so I'm very glad. I have seen people saying that her wings in the new one are not bone wings. They are bone wings. They're just, like, decorated, so they look bony to me. I don't know about you guys. Anyway, I'm very happy with her fantastical bone elemental form. Anyway, then let's address some other things. So there are actually two more things I wanted to address in this little addendum to the video that I didn't mention before. Basically, there's two characters that some people think are connections between Ever After High and Monster High. I personally don't think they are, but I thought I would address them since I know people will ask about them and my thoughts on them in the comments. So the first one is Serene Von Boo. A lot of times people will ask me, oh, isn't her mom from Ever After High if her mom's a mermaid? We don't actually know that for sure. What we know is her mom is a mermaid. Her mom met her dad, who is a ghost, when she was, like, by this, like, shipwreck in the ocean. I read her diary. It's never addressed that her mom is from the realm of fairy tales. And her mom, honestly, her mom would have never went to Ever After High unless her mom was, like, a named character in a fairy tale. So honestly, probably the only mermaid who really goes to Ever After High is, like, the Little Mermaid or the daughter of the Little Mermaid. So I don't think Serena Von Boo really necessarily has any specific connection to Ever After High. And I also think that the world of Monster High and Ever After High, like, we know they're in the same universe, and so even, like, if her mom is maybe from, like, the fairy tale side of the universe, it's not, like, that shocking that a mermaid would end up at Monster High, just because, like, again, they're in the same universe. Even if her mom was from the fairy tale side, like, it's just not that shocking to me. And there are a lot of similar creatures in both Ever After High and Monster High. For example, like, you know, we have, like, the wolves, like Cerise's dad, like the big bad wolf, and that's kind of similar to, you know, like the werewolves that we actually have in Monster High. So there's a lot of similar creatures across like in all areas of the realm. So I don't think it's that shocking, and I don't think she necessarily has any like specific connection to Ever After High, and she's never talked about Ever After High or anything. And it's not like a Gigi situation where I'm like, oh my gosh, Gigi literally has like a destiny of a genie. Like, it's not a situation like that where I'm like, oh yeah, and like Gigi literally knows like Giles Grimm. Like, it's not a situation like that. Like, maybe her mom was near the fairy tale realm, but I don't think she has any specific ties to Ever After High. Now let's talk about the next character, who I don't actually have a specific doll of, but the next character that people always think is from Ever After High, when there's no evidence, LOL, is Mercedes King. Now, the reason people think Mercedes King is from Ever After High, or her dad is from Ever After High, is because her dad's the Rat King, and there's like a Rat King in the Nutcracker, and the Nutcracker is more of like a fairy tale thing. But here's the thing, we have no knowledge that her dad, the Rat King, is the Rat King from the Nutcracker, because Rat Kings are kind of like a folkloric monster outside of just the Nutcracker. And again, similar to Serena Von Boo, I read Mercedes' diary. There is no indication that her dad has anything to do with the Nutcracker or anything to do with Ever After High. In fact, it seems more like he's like a mob boss in Boo York. Like, I don't think he is specifically like a Rat King from a fairy tale or anything. And if you actually really want to know like what Rat Kings are, the name Rat King actually comes from when a bunch of rats get their tails stuck together. That's why, like, the Rat King, if you see the Rat King in the Nutcracker, he has like a million heads. It's because the name Rat King literally comes from when a bunch of rats get stuck together, and it's really gross, and they like all end up dying. Ew. But like, that's where like the folkloric idea of like a Rat King came out of. So like, yes, most of us in the modern world know the Rat King from the Nutcracker, but that's not the only place Rat Kings are from. And it doesn't seem like Mercedes' dad is from the Nutcracker. Maybe his cousin is the Rat King from the Nutcracker. Again, we don't know necessarily how far apart Ever After High and Monster High are. We do know like the main characters of Ever After High and the main characters of Monster High. I have no idea the other one exists, but it's very possible there are other people in the universe who like know like, oh, if you take a boat and travel really far, you could kind of get to this other part of the world. I don't know. I definitely do think Headmaster Grimm, though, is trying to hide Monster High from the Ever After High students, because I think he knows if the Ever After High students, like Raven, knew about it, they would honestly probably ship off and go to Monster High and be like, see ya, I don't want to follow my destiny. But yeah, that's the tea. But now, let's talk about the Legend of Shadow High. So the Legend of Shadow High follows Apple, Raven, Frankie, and Drac, and also Maddie a little bit. It's a little unbalanced. There's more Ever After High characters in that one. But instead of like going into like a labyrinth, it's actually, and again, this is with G2 Monster High instead of G1. It's actually that like G2, Frankie, and Drac end up accidentally getting transported to Ever After High. And there's a whole confrontation with the Evil Queen and everything. I'm not going to get into exactly what happens in here. But it's a lot of fun. I do like the book. I don't like that it's with G2 Monster High instead of G1. So I will include, like, I will mention Shadow High in this video, but I don't really count it as like an official connection, because again, Ever After High, like I said, was always meant to be with Ever After High G1, not G2. So it just kind of sucks. Like, yeah, they did do the crossover and that was fun, but like all the buildup was for nothing, because the Astranova phone call means nothing because that wasn't G2 Monster High. Cupid means nothing because she came from G1 Monster High. Gigi means nothing because she was in G1 Monster High. So like, yeah, it's cool that we got a crossover. And honestly, basically, in my last video about the history of the Ever After High fandom, I kind of mentioned how I really think, like, they had Shannon Hale and her husband Dean Hale write The Legend of Shadow High because of the fan demand, because I think when the last movie got canceled, people were rightly very upset, but Mattel didn't want to spend any more money into making that movie because they were already kind of struggling with their doll lines financially. That's the time where they were making a lot of the doll lines cheaper and rebooting them and canceling them and stuff. And so they didn't want to pour any, like, a lot of money that would have been costed in, like, the production of like that movie, and also they would have had to make dolls for the movie and everything. So I think they just decided to like kind of make the book to appease the fans, but also because they were really trying to heavily rebrand into G2 Monster High at the time. They're like, okay, we can have this book, but it has to be G2 Monster High, which kind of sucks. I really wish they just let Shannon Hale write the book with G1 Monster High in mind. I don't know for sure. Maybe like that was Shannon Hale's choice to write it with G2 Monster High. I highly doubt it. I think Mattel told her to, because yeah. But honestly, I think it would have been so much better if it was G1 Monster High, because that's what it was building up to all along. But anyway, those are all the connections that I know of between Ever After High and Monster High. Let me know if there's anything else that I missed. I think I got like everything. Like, I kind of did this by heart just because I've talked about these things so many times, especially on TikTok, but now TikTok is getting banned, so I'm gonna lose all that, which is the other reason I kind of wanted to make this video. But yeah, anyway, make sure to support me. If TikTok isn't banned, you can follow me on TikTok. Definitely follow me on Instagram. Please follow me on Instagram. You can check out my Etsy shop for doll clothes that I'm sewing. And you can also, yeah, just check out my website, check out my links. And if you want to order a custom doll outfit, you can check out my business email down below and email me if you have like something like a custom doll dress or something you want to commission from me. But anyway, thank you guys so much for watching this video. I hope you learned something about the connections between Ever After High and Monster High, and if you didn't, I hope you enjoyed hearing me yap about the connections between Ever After High and Monster High. Anyway, bye guys!